Richard Nixon, the 37th President of the United States. When Americans hear this name, they instantly associate it with scandal and secrecy. Leaving office as an enemy of the press, one might not consider Nixon as a game-changer in president-media relationships. However, this is not true. Though it is one of the most overlooked legacies, Richard Nixon has influenced the way modern politicians present themselves. Throughout his political career, Nixon approached the media in multiple ways, as he adapted to the presidential pressures of social approval. Through a course of trial and error, Nixon not only taught future politicians what not to do, but also what is effective in approaching scandalous situations. Although many do not call it by its name or use it intentionally, Nixonian dialogue has become part of politicians' campaign strategies and media relationships. The history of the presidency and the press is one of the oldest and most important political relationships in America. Considering sometimes to be the fourth branch of government, the press plays a crucial part in connecting politicians with their constituents. For the President of the United States, this connection is even more important. 26th President Theodore Roosevelt used the press to his advantage during his time in office. His outgoing nature and habits, such as bear hunting, made him popular with the press and a celebrity personality. Roosevelt used his fame as an outlet to get his message out to constituents. Not every president has such a good relationship with the press. The untrusting and hostile relationships between the president and the press began earlier than the Nixon presidency. Grover Cleveland, the 22nd and 24th president, was known for his extreme dislike of the media and refused to participate in press events like the president before him. Herbert Hoover, the 31st president, shared a lesser but similar distrust of the media and answered only pre-submitted questions. The press also shared unfriendly opinions of the presidents during their term. Ulysses S. Grant once said, "I have been on the subject of abuse and slander scarcely ever equaled in political history," in response after the press continued accusations of corruption during his term. Nixon himself was characterized as a private man and less than socially graceful. Nixon was famous for taking most of the press commentary personally and targeted towards himself and not his political career. Nixon easily grew paranoid around the press and saw them as a nuisance. One of Nixon's first and most iconic uses of media was during his campaign as vice president in 1952. The speech was used in response of accusations of impropriety with the money given to him by supporters. Nixon took to the television to clear his name before he plunged out of favor. He talked about his humble beginnings and his personal journey. In the speech, Nixon tries to appeal to the emotions of his audience. Nixon had changed the way politicians were viewed within the media. Unlike previous presidents, Nixon openly showed a vulnerable side to him. He was no longer the legend-like hero that politicians were seen like before him. Nixon was flawed, like the people around him. During the 30-minute speech, Nixon introduced his wife and children. Nixon had made himself more than a one-man platform, but a family platform. The checker speech led to a large amount of support. The nation was now rooting for Nixon, your average man. When the election was won, Nixon saw the power of media. He saw that night what television can do, and he was in awe. He was absolutely spellbound. You could see the change, says Nixon's media advisor Ted Rogers. However, this honeymoon period did not last for Nixon. The presidential debate of 1960 is famous for being the first televised presidential debate. For the first time, American citizens could now see candidates within their own living rooms. Those who were once just voices in a box now had faces to identify by. Many politicians were still foreign to the concept of televised campaigning. Representatives that focused mainly on their oral presentations would now have to focus on their visual presence. This addition came easy to 43-year-old Robert Kennedy, who had been an actor before his political career, and a disadvantage to his opponent, Richard Nixon. Nixon had experienced the hardships of vice presidency, and it showed on him physically. Nixon had just left the hospital a few days prior and had a sickly appearance. Though he outweighed his opponent in experience, Kennedy had beaten him in charm and appeal, and that ended up being what mattered the most. The loss of the debate and soon the loss of the election fueled the already tense relationship between Nixon and the press.